what happened with Merrick Garland when President Obama nominated him for the high court. Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader, refused to give him a hearing. He was pressed on all of this and what this means after the Kavanaugh process on CBS yesterday morning by John Dickerson. And McConnell pushed back against the idea that his decision to block Garland's vote, quote, kicked off a new stage in the partisanship associated with Supreme Court nominees. He then argued there's nothing new about blocking Garland's nomination. He said just listen and look at history. Watch this exchange.
You have to go back to 1880 to find the last time a Senate controlled by a different party from the president confirmed a Supreme Court justice to a vacancy created in the middle of a presidential election. They also conveniently forgotten that Joe Biden said in 1992, when he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee, the Democrats control the Senate, Republican in the White House. If a vacancy occurred, they wouldn't fill it. They also conveniently forgot that Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid, 18 months before the end of Bush 43, said if a Supreme Court vacancy occurred, they wouldn't fill it. Talk about hypocrisy.
Right. But, Mr. Leader, I don't think that's right. In 1956, Eisenhower nominated Brennan. The 84th Congress was Democrat-controlled. And also on the Biden rule, Joe Biden was talking in the abstract. There was no nominee. No nominee was blocked. And he said to not have the nomination come up before the election, but that it could come up after the election. And so what Democrats say when they hear you doing this is they say he's creating new rules to essentially do what he wants to do. And as you've written in your book, The Long Game, when you do that, it actually hurts democracy.
Yeah, well, that's not at all what happened, John. You're completely misconstruing what happened. What I gave you is the history of this. I know the history of this. I've spent a lot of time on this throughout my career. What I did was entirely consistent with what the history of the Senate's been in that situation going back to 1880.
Well, I think the 1956 example, and also in 1968, later in the election cycle, when a Democratic president put somebody forward, the Republican leader worked with him to get that person a hearing and get him towards the Supreme Court, which is not something that you did. A vote at the time.
Then there was a Democrat. Then there was a Democrat in the White House and a Democratic Senate.
But the Republican leader at the time tried to help the Democratic president.
John, you are not listening to me. The history is exactly as I told you.
Well, we have a disagreement about the history, but I greatly appreciate you being with us here today. Mr. Leader, thanks so much.
Well, you can't help but remember, Poppy, the Daniel Moynihan quote, you're entitled to your own opinion, but not your own facts.
Not your own facts. There you go.
Here we are. Joining us now, Simone Sanders, CNN political commentator, former national press secretary for Bernie Sanders, and Republican strategist Noel Nickbour. Noel, if I could begin with you, would you grant that it's a bit rich of the Senate Majority Leader to claim these new rules in effect?
Well, I mean, you've got to admit that the majority of American voters may not know the rich history that both of these individuals know. So you've got to look at a lot of people are probably going to be doing a lot of fact checking. But McConnell,
but whether they know, I mean, whether Americans know it, the fact is that when a Republican president, I mean, you saw John Dickerson there cited in the 1950s, Republican, Dwight Eisenhower, democratically controlled Congress. He was able to nominate and got in fact, a great Supreme Court justice through. So what point is Mitch McConnell making here?
Well, I think Mitch McConnell's sticking to his guns. And if you see, we just saw the clip. He's not backing down. He has said, stated that he doesn't know his facts.
He may not be backing down.
Yeah, he's wrong on the facts.
Well, I mean, obviously, you've got to look at where the facts are. And if Mitch McConnell is wrong, Mitch McConnell's wrong. But Mitch McConnell has stated that the commentator is not understanding what his point is. So with that, regardless, I don't think this is going to do anything to affect the midterms. I think that this is a disagreement. I think Mitch McConnell thinks that he is right on track and that the commentator did not understand what he was trying to say. And it's fact versus fact. And it looks like, obviously, the facts are on the other side. And the other guy won the fact point. But where Mitch McConnell's concerned, he's disagreeing with how this was laid out.
So, Simone, what the argument, you're laughing, and I want to know why in a moment. I mean, it seems like the argument being made here in part is that the facts don't matter as much on that. And Charles Blow, liberal columnist, as you know, in the New York Times, let me read you what he writes. Liberals have to look beyond emotions, talking about the midterms. Liberals have to look beyond emotions, beyond reactionary electoral enthusiasm, beyond needing to fall in love with candidates in order to vote for them, beyond the coming election and towards the coming showdown. What is the most effective way for liberals to do that if it's not pointing out the facts?
Well, one, Poppy, I'm somebody that believes we have to continuously point out the facts because facts still matter regardless of what Mitch McConnell or even the president